Story: The careful review of a job contract. The unreturnable engagement ring. When I was ready to propose to my girlfriend, I went to a well-known jewelry store to buy a ring. I wanted to surprise her, but I also knew she would likely want to exchange it for another one. So I asked the staff beforehand if I could return the ring for a refund if needed. They assured me I could, so I bought the ring for $900 and proposed. As I expected, my fiancé found another ring at a different store. I went back to the first store to return the ring, but the employee handed me a small piece of paper to sign. I was about to sign when I noticed the fine print. I confirmed that this purchase is final and non-refundable. I asked the employee why I had to sign this, and she quickly took the paper away, called the manager, and he promptly refunded the full amount to my card. For those interested, this happened at People's Jewelers in Vancouver. I'm a musician, and once I was almost signed to a label, the contract was written in very broken English and was filled with idiocy. But especially amusing were these points. 1, I had to give them my name. 2, I had to give them the copyrights to all my old songs. And 3, if they didn't sell all physical copies of my music, I would have to compensate for the losses out of my own pocket. The deceptive mortgage agreement: my husband and I were buying a house, and he signed the papers immediately. I had some other things to do, so I could only come in the evening. When I arrived, I started to look over the loan application, and our lender saw this and said, you don't have to read all that, especially since your husband has already signed. I replied, no, I want to make sure everything is as I want it. It turned out that on paper, we were borrowing $250, 000, at a 25% interest rate. I hadn't signed anything yet and quickly left. The lender started threatening me with a lawsuit, to which I responded that it would be cheaper for me to go to court than to pay his exorbitant interest rates. Since then, I've only dealt with mortgages myself. By the way, that lender was my husband's school friend. The sneaky employment contract: I once found a job 350 miles from home with great conditions. The interview went well, and I happened to meet a guy I had worked with years ago. Everything seemed so perfect that I rented an apartment within walking distance of the workplace. I was formally hired and just needed to bring in the signed papers. The day before I had to submit them, I decided to glance over the contract. I noticed 3 major issues. I don't remember the exact wording, but I'll try to paraphrase. 1. The position you are applying for is the only one you can have in our company. Despite possible salary increases, you will never be promoted or change your position. We need people dedicated to their positions. 2. We do not provide any health insurance services. Your health is your responsibility. 3. If you are fired or if you leave the company, you cannot work for any company that has computers or internet for the next year. I was applying for a tech support analyst position, and the salary was supposed to be great, but seeing these clauses, I ran away immediately. The 3rd clause would never hold up in court. They were just trying to intimidate people who don't know better. The non-compete clause in a restaurant job. At my last job in a restaurant, we were sent new employment contract terms. I opened it and saw a non-compete clause, which meant that after leaving the job, you couldn't work in the same industry for some time. I told my colleagues about it, and as a result, almost no one signed the new contract. A week later, the management had to revise it. A non-compete clause in a restaurant? What mysterious secrets does your restaurant hold? This is to prevent people from leaving. If you don't allow someone to work elsewhere, they will endure their job until the end. The gym membership scam. I once decided to get a gym membership. Instead of the promised $90 per month, $250 was charged to my card. Disappointed by the deception, I went home. The next night, I couldn't sleep because I was still angry. In the morning, I decided to call them to see if I could cancel the membership. They told me it was only possible if I moved to an area where they didn't have a gym. The next day, I read our contract and found a clause stating that the membership could be canceled without any explanation within 2 weeks. Since only 3 days had passed, I quickly got it canceled, but the money was not refunded. The car dealership's data grab. I took my car to a dealership for repairs. They fixed it but wouldn't return it without a signature. When I read the contract, there was a clause stating that I had to allow them to share my personal information with third parties. I refused, and after I pointed out the clause, they had to delete my data from their system. I simply took my keys and left. A car mechanic or dealer can only hold your car if you haven't paid for their services. If the bill is paid, they can't keep your car, otherwise it's theft and you can call the police. The overpriced apartment with strict rules. I was looking for a new room and went to see an apartment. I liked it so much that I was ready to pay the deposit, but I decided to read the house rules first, which the landlord had sent by email. It should be noted that while viewing the apartment, I was given another set of rules printed on paper. They seemed overly strict, especially for such an expensive rent, but I understood there was nothing I could do about it. Thankfully, I thought to read the email. The rules in that list were completely different from what I was shown on site. There were gems like 1. If you want to bring a guest, you need to submit a written request a week in advance, which must be approved by all residents of the apartment. 2. Guests can only stay until 10 p.m. 3. Guests are not allowed to stay overnight. 4. When someone comes to visit you, they must leave a $20 payment to cover the cost of water in the toilet. I read all this and thought, are you serious? You want me to pay over $1,000 for a room and not be able to invite friends without hassle? So, of course, I didn't take the room. There were plenty of other chumps there. The freelance media contract. I was about to freelance for a media company. At the time, I was a graduate with 2 years of experience. They sent me a contract with these terms. 1. An hourly rate of £650. 2. An expectation that I could work 37.5 hours a week. 3. I had to use my own car for work with no coverage for wear and tear or fuel. And 4. I had to give them all rights to any creative works produced by me in the 2 years prior to starting the new job. I refused. The mortgage rate increase. My wife and I had 3 days left to sign the contract for the purchase of our apartment when we were sent the latest version of the contract. We noticed that our mortgage rate had suddenly increased by a small percentage, like plus 0.2%. We asked what was going on, and they replied that they had checked our credit history and adjusted the interest rate according to our current credit rating. We had a bad aftertaste from this and decided not to sign. By pure coincidence, a week later, our company was bought out by another company and moved us to a different state. If we had bought the apartment then, we would have had to either quit or sell immediately. Thank you for watching. In the comments, you can share a story about a time you were glad you read the papers before signing them. And don't forget to check out our other fresh, warm, and super tasty videos.